Alrighty, good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. My name is Amanda, and I am the Regional Director for Brain Balance. I know we're still letting folks in. So again, my name is Amanda. I'm the Regional Director for Brain Balance, and it's a pleasure to be here this evening. Today, we are presenting on brain health for optimal functioning. So this is applicable for your kiddos. This is applicable for you and as adult, and hopefully for others that you know as well, and be able to take away some practical tips at the end, okay? Okay. So I always love starting off with a little warm-up activity, just to get our brain and bodies ready to be engaged. What I would love for you to do is think about all the stress you've had today and really clench all areas of your body. Make it really tight. Your fist, your body, your back, your feet, your toes. Just really hold on to it really tight. Clench, 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 clench. And then when you're ready, I want you to slowly exhale and relax. We're going to do that one more time. Big breath in and clench. And whenever you're ready, slowly release and breathe out. And we're going to do it one more time. Clench, 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 big breath. And whenever you're ready to just slowly exhale and relax. And you can just wiggle those shoulders. Maybe your back is a little tired from working today. You might want to stretch maybe your legs a little bit if you've been on your feet all day. I want to get you all warmed up and ready to go because we have good things to share today. And I know Hope on the Hard Road, thank you for having me tonight. I want to make sure everybody knows that they can always ask questions in the chat box too, okay? Alrighty, so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about who's brain balance, why we got invited tonight, what about the brain and development do you need to know, and then what can you do about it, particularly around neuroplasticity, and then best practices, like I mentioned. And we'll save Q&A most likely until the end, okay? Alrighty, so again, my name is Amanda. I love representing brain balance because we really embody a lot of the same values. Me coming in, basically, of wanting everyone to meet their potential and live their best lives, basically. And my background, I should say, is in education. So I'm not a medical professional. If you do have medical questions that come up out of this, please make sure you talk to your providers, all right? But I'm happy to answer any questions and share any anecdotes of the families that we've worked with. At this point, we've worked with over 60,000 individuals, both kids, teens, and adults. And it's pretty incredible the things that you are in control of in your own lives that we'll talk about today, okay? So who do we see? Again, we see kids, teens, and adults, all different challenges, all different goals. A lot of folks come to us because they have challenges with focus, they want to improve their anxiety, maybe they want to improve their learning or memory or attention, performance overall, even competitive athletes and musicians. And you don't have to be diagnosed. Over half of our families are not diagnosed for whatever reason. And because we are non-medical as well, we do not diagnose either. So we draw a lot of different folks who are just looking for a different way. You know, maybe you've already tried the traditional route for interventions, whatever the challenge may be, and it really hasn't worked, or you saw success, but you hit that ceiling with that type of intervention or therapy, or you have never been able to address it, especially our adult population that have gone either undiagnosed or have gone down a route that, again, just hasn't been successful for them. So we see a lot of different types of students, and sometimes we see the whole family as well. And we have a lot of research to back up what we do these days. So a lot of parents, clinicians, and teachers are continuously reporting the improvements they see with a program like ours, and hopefully to address challenges that you talk about tonight. And that includes social skills, motor and coordination skills, your academic achievements, actually, your behaviors, whether it's regulating your emotions and not having anger management challenges or outbursts, to being, again, anxious and shy. That could impact you as well, to just overall well-being, alrighty? You can see a lot of that research on our website right now. And if you have questions about that, just let me know, but go to brainbalance.com/research if you'd like like to read about our latest studies. All right, let's go into it. Let's talk about the brain. So basically, if you think about the brain, it's quite a squishy, very important, 3-ish pound organ in our body. We have over 1 billion different neurons in our brain, and there should be over 1 trillion something interconnections in our brain. And so from infancy until the moment we take our last breath, our brain is constantly rewiring and changing, and we want to train it to have optimal functioning, right? That's the whole topic tonight. And the way we do that is through sensory engagement and movement. If you think about an infant, the moment they're born, they are blasted into the world full of sensory input, and eventually they are able to move around in the world, and people pick them up, and they learn how to scoot and walk, and all that great development that should ideally happen. And that is what allows us to continuously grow our brain. And sorry, I gotta change the slide. And that is really important to us. We'll talk a lot about brain connectivity tonight because there's a lot of research that continuously shows just how critical those connections, those interconnections are, not just the regions of the brain, not to be excused for being young. So there's different parts of your brain still developing. It's again really about the interconnections. And there's research that shows basically the severity of those disconnections in the brain oftentimes correlate with the severity of the various challenges you may or may not be experiencing, which could include neurodevelopmental disorders like ADHD and autism, to cognitive difficulties, and even things like mental health. All right. So again, it's about the connections. All righty. And those connections are, of course, connected to one another. If you think of the brain like a highway, I want to have the most smooth pathways possible. I don't want to hit traffic. I don't want to take the scenic route without meaning to do so. All right. And you may experience that in your own lives. You may have your kiddos, you can literally see them struggle and process and stop at times. And because everything is connected, you can have really strong pathways that help one thrive and have these amazing strengths like creativity. I hear that and see that a lot. Or the weaker pathways that result in difficulty, again, what we described, things like focus, emotional regulation, retention, learning, right? Social skills. And again, it's all connected. So when we improve our brain connections, everything improves for the better, right? It's this tide, if you will, that you get to ride. It's not the idea of that when you balance your brain, the weaker pathways get stronger while the strong pathways get weaker. It's not like that at all. And because it's all connected, we want to make sure everything is as strong as possible to really build up that foundation for functioning. So we know the stronger the brain connections, the better the processing skills, the better the cognition, and the better the functioning, overall functioning. And remember, we do that through sensory engagement. So beyond the 5 senses like sight, smell, hearing, touching, right? There's also other senses like how we balance and how we feel and connect to the world around us as well. So all those sensory pieces, along with actual exercise and movement and engagement with your own body and the world around you, is really, really key. All righty. The goal is to have a balanced brain, like I mentioned. A balanced brain is a teachable brain, we like to say. And when that happens, it does not mean we're perfect people. By no means does it mean we're perfect people. There's no such thing. We all have areas that are stronger and areas that we can improve upon. However, if we can have a much more balanced brain that's developmentally appropriate, whether you're 3, 10, 50, right, and up, the better you're going to be able to adapt around challenges, right, in your everyday life. Whenever I have parents ask me, or even adults ask me, how do I know if this is an issue? Really, my answer is, well, is it impacting your functioning? If it's keeping you from living your best life, from getting that promotion, from showing your true self around friends, to being invited to birthday parties, whatever it may be, we can help you, and you can help yourselves build better, stronger brain connections. And we'll get into the specifics of that later. And whenever there are imbalances, you may see some of these symptoms. So right brain weak, So on the right side of the brain, the green color there, we call that the break center of the brain. So it's a lot of the control center, if you will. While the left side of the brain, in a very general sense, tends to be more of the academic side, right? The balance of the two is key. And when you don't see that it be too balanced, a lot of times, if it's a more left brain weak situation, then you see challenges with learning. I see that a lot, especially with reading, right? Motivation or even self-esteem and social skills is a big piece there, all right? Where right brain, majority of people tend to be more right brain weak, it's challenges with focus and impulse control and understanding the big picture beyond just being able to name all the details. Oh, excuse me. And so, again, a balance of the two is really, really key. All righty. Rather than just focusing on the symptoms, right? A lot of programs, schools, interventions in general really just ask what's the issue and then how do we help you with that issue. Where we come in, and I want you to really think about, is not just I want my child to be independent one day, and right now I have to remind them to do the same morning routine every day, right? So it's not just about here's a tool, here's a visual board to help you see what that kiddo is supposed to do. It's understanding why you have to repeat yourself every day, why this routine that they've been doing for years oftentimes is still not clicking for them, right? And so underneath the surface, what is responsible for our everyday functioning includes, do we have control of our bodies, which is the primitive reflexes at the very bottom there, that foundation for development. We need to have control. All right, I'll talk more about that in a moment. Sensory processing skills, again, how do we take in the inputs around us and all that stimuli? And then how do we, are we processing it accurately, essentially? And then how long does it take us to respond to the world around us? All right. So there's this synchronization that needs to happen. We also need to have our motor functions in check, from, again, balance and coordination, and even our core strength, which is really important for processing speed in the brain, to our fine motor skills that really affect how we interact with everyday activities like opening something up, writing. It could be a big issue, to even speech and articulation, because there's a lot of small muscles in the mouth. Okay, so there's a lot that's involved. Here's an example of why all this is important. So for primitive reflexes, I want you to think about brand new babies. This is one of the images that I find most people can grasp right away. No pun intended, but the grasp reflex is when babies are first born and you put something in their hand, they want to grab, right? And that's important initially for survival, right? They don't quite have their um, skill sets yet, right? And so that's important then. But as we get older, most of these different reflexes, from learning how to turn and roll over so that when you look one side, everything rolls over, to the feeding reflex, that when there's stimulation on the cheek, that you can turn and know to feed, all right? Or even the Moreau or startle reflex, that fight or flight. You're always kind of being on edge so that if there's danger, mom or dad can come save me, essentially. So those reflexes are so important initially, not so much as we get older. About age 1, 2, 3, kind of depends on the reflex. We want those to what we call inhibit. And when we have something like asymmetrical tonic neck reflex, this is the separation in head and neck movement. So you're not just turning your entire body. That is responsible for helping babies learn how to roll over initially. Well, that can impact the visual system because you're not able to efficiently take in the world around us. And if that's the case, then it can impact how we learn, because we might be literally missing information, what we're hearing, what we're seeing, all right? And if you're missing information, then it could impact your motor functions, because you're not able to translate what you're seeing quickly enough to your hands, to making sense of what you're supposed to write as well. All right. So taking notes, for instance, can be an issue. Following directions, essentially, verbal directions can be an impact as well. So keep in mind, again, everything's connected. All these functional pieces need to be in sync, and you have to develop that function before you can control that function. And so often, so many times I see parents and different providers and interventions that happen, wanting this individual, whether it's a child or adult, to have this top-down control. And unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. We really need to have this bottom-up development and support the whole person if we are to expect something like behavior to be positive and not maladaptive. For one to be able to learn and do well in an academic situation or learning situation, to having appropriate social skills, to the ability to focus and pay attention and reduce those impulses, right? But if you look at those top two tiers in this progression of development that drives cognitive success, those are the main reasons most people come to me, and the challenges that you might even have yourself. And again, it's not so simple as let's just work on that. There's this foundation and baseline that needs to happen. So rather than the example I gave with the executive functioning in the morning routine, for instance, rather than just giving the tool of a visual checklist, essentially, I want to understand and build up each individual's toolbox. Build that toolbox up so that they can receive and apply those tools much more consistently. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. All righty. So, question: how do we strengthen brain connectivity? I said it a few times. I know I don't want to engage too much in the chat because we want to save it for later, but if you remember, it's the sensory engagement and the motor movement. Whether you're a child, whether you're a senior, everything in between, we need to move our bodies, and that's key. And this will lead us into neuroplasticity. So if you've heard of neuroplasticity, this has been a big term that's been bouncing around just because we know so much more about brain health these days. And what's important to know is that your brain can change your entire life. It used to be the accepted idea that once you become an adult, whatever, however you want to interpret that as well, right? 18, 25, 30, that's kind of it for your brain. And it kind of goes downhill from there. And that's not true. We know now that the brain can continuously develop new, stronger connections, but it can also weaken certain connections. Neuroplasticity goes both ways. And I want us to focus on the positives, how we can change it for the better, for optimal functioning. All righty. And one of the definitions that I really, quotes that I really like is neurons that fire together, wire together. This is another pretty popular quote about how we need these connections in the brain to be on the same team. Let's put it that way, right? On the same team. So neurons that fire together, wire together. Alrighty. So how do we do that? That's the question. So I want to dive in a little bit deeper here. This is where you might want to take a few notes. Okay. So number one, you have to exercise your body. We hear this a lot. We know that we need to move our bodies, especially if you're a working adult at a desk all day. Literally get up every 30 minutes or an hour or so just to go to, say, the water cooler, or take a lap around the office, or step outside into the sunshine. That makes a big difference. Alrighty. There is specific research and data that is available out there. If you're interested in learning more, I can share that with you. Tonight, we don't have the capacity to be able to go really deep into all these different healthy habits, but I'll give you a good gist. So move your bodies. That's the main thing. Move your bodies as much as possible. Get those kids to move, especially if your kiddos are having a hard time learning in school. Get them to move their bodies in the morning. Back in the day, maybe your kids still get to do this, maybe not. I used to be able to go play in the playground when I got to school before school started, right? I feel like that doesn't really happen anymore. Everybody shows up late, or because of the pandemic, everyone's just restricted, into their own little bubbles. But here's the thing. The research shows if you can exercise your body in the morning, that is much more likely to trigger those happy neurotropic factors in the brain that help you function and process information better the rest of the day. It doesn't matter when you exercise your body, morning, afternoon, or night, it's going to be good. But if you want it to be extra helpful, in the morning is key. So raise that heart rate. That's the biggest thing. In fact, for you adults out there, heart rate variability, look that up. Heart rate variability is the biggest predictor of longevity. There's a lot of research on longevity, but heart rate variability, we know, is a huge predictor of how well you're going to live the rest of your life. Okay, so move your body. All right, everybody, exercise your body. The next thing you need to do is make sure you exercise your brain. The brain is fascinating, it's complicated. I mentioned those billion plus neurons, all those interconnections. And here's the thing, it's kind of a use it or lose it situation. Your brain, the pathways that you built don't just go away, but they can prune off essentially. And this is a good thing, especially when you're young, you're learning and taking everything in. You don't want to just get overloaded by information that's not important for you. So the brain does need to prune information out. However, we don't want it to prune away things that are important for us, but you can only really keep it strong if you exercise it. So, to be able to keep your brain strong, not only do you need to move your body, but you need to expose it to new ideas and have a lot of sensory engagement with both of these two bullet points here. Alrighty. So, the brain loves novelty, but there's a trick. The brain doesn't like things too hard because it will shut down, right? And you probably have seen that a lot in your lives. And you also can't have it to be too easy because you literally won't grow your brain. I tell kids this all the time. You have to fail to succeed. If everything was easy for you, there's no point in school and your brain literally wouldn't grow. You have to be able to learn from those failures. So I like to tell my teens, especially, to fail forward, right? Learn from your mistakes and then continue to practice, because that repetition, that consistency, that approaching problems in different ways is how you can get your brain to be the most agile possible. Alrighty. So exercise your body, exercise your brain. Alrighty. The next thing is nutrition. If nutrition has not been high on your priority list, it needs to be next. Nutrition is key because what we put in our body matters. Simply put, it matters. It affects how we think, it affects how we feel, it affects our energy levels, our mood. And the more variety, I'll put it that way, the more variety that you introduce into your diet, the better. So don't eat the same things over and over because of the microbiomes in our gut. And also, the more it's a low inflammation diet, the better too, because inflammation really does affect how we process information. From having a cold, I had a student last week who came in very different that day, was pretty congested and stuffed up. Wasn't because of anything they ate, because that's the first thing we normally ask. What did your kiddo eat before coming to brain balance? And we knew, hey, for a couple of days, because of that congestion and that inflammation, that child was acting a little abnormal, right? What do I mean by low inflammation diet, though? It really honestly depends on you. Some of the highest, uh, I guess, foods that tend to affect people tend to be gluten, dairy, corn, soy, definitely refined sugars and the amount of sugar, all right, total grams of sugar a day, and even eggs can be inflammatory. But talk to a nutritionist. They're licensed to be able to support you in these areas. At Brain Balance, we do have nutrition as part of our program, but we have our, again, licensed nutrition coaches to support our families on their journey to be on this low inflammation diet and learn, truly learn, what foods are you sensitive to, right? You might have, I have a student that just started today. She's a great eater, sophisticated palate, as mom said, but it doesn't mean that all the things that she's eating is good for her. She may be surprised to learn down the road through our process that, one of her favorite foods actually, causes her to not remember the content she's been studying the night before, kind of deal, right? So just think about nutrition. The more variety, the better, and look into the gut-brain connection. That the microbiomes that I talked about earlier have a huge role in how we process information and function. Alrighty. So the gut brain axis is really important and not to be ignored. Alrighty. Have a variety in your diet. Low inflammation diet is key as well. And then sleep. We all know sleep is important, but how much do you actually prioritize it, right? Whether you're a child or adult, we all need sleep. Sleep is a time for our cells and our brain to process information from the day, for things to recover and repair, and for us to feel rested. We need to set ourselves up for success. We tend to set ourselves up to have a wake up alarm, right? Most of us do. What about a go to sleep alarm? If you're not getting enough sleep because you keep going to bed too late, set up an alarm. For your kiddos, how soon are you starting that bedtime routine, right? Is it within 15, 30 minutes? Like, okay, you got to get ready for bed and, it's the time's up. Or are you starting that 2 hours before, such as no screen time 2 hours before, right? Starting to wind down the brain, right? What does that look like? Is it stories, which, by the way, reading is pretty stimulating for the brain, but I know it helps a lot of people, right? The colors you're exposed to, remember, our senses are very unique in how it triggers different parts of the brain. So there's certain colors that are more stimulating and other colors that are more calming. So there are some of those resources, by the way, in terms of sensory details, I guess, and how it affects your day on our website. Okay, so you can check that out as well. So sleep is huge. By the way, if you have a neurodivergent child or you are neurodivergent yourself, meaning you have ADHD, autism, or those symptoms, right? You just think a little bit different. You tend to need more sleep than your average peer because your brain is working so much harder. Okay. The next thing is you need to socialize. We are not meant to be isolated beings. Even if your kiddo or you yourself enjoy being on your own, make time to get out there and engage with the world. Literally, if you smile at a stranger versus walk past them without engaging in any way, your brain will change for the better. All right. But socialization is not that easy for a lot of our kiddos, probably. We talk a lot about that. In fact, in February, we will have a special guest presentation all around socialization. It will be in person and virtual and free. So I'm really excited to have this guest presenter with us. So more information on our website soon. However, again, we can build up these skills once we have that stronger baseline for that expectation. Okay. So get out there, make some friends, build that community. We all need a tribe and a community. All right. We can't do it alone. The last thing I want to talk about is just mindfulness. How do we reduce our stress levels from kiddos to adults? And think about yourselves. How much are you taking care of yourself? Because your stress and your anxiety will rub off on those around you. All right. They can sense that. And so mindfulness is literally just being present in the moment and not worrying about everything else. Like tonight, if you are listening to this presentation and wondering, oh, what do I do to prepare for bed, or what am I going to make for lunch tomorrow? Gently bring your thoughts back to this presentation, right? Move your body. Maybe you need to stretch a little bit, all right? But being present is key. Breath work is really nice too, just focusing on your breath. It is not, by the way, the same as meditation. Meditation incorporates mindfulness, but it's a whole art and a practice. And so just start small, right? Being mindful in your everyday moments, from what you're eating, having a conversation, but focusing on what those textures and flavors are, to when you're walking from the house to the car, what does the temperature feel like? What does the sun feel like on your skin? What are the colors that you're seeing in the sky? How are the clouds, changing? Or what are the sounds of the leaves and branches that are swaying, right, with the wind? That's really key. And if we can practice these few healthy habits every day, and this is something that you are capable of doing every day, right? Then you can enhance your overall well-being and really be set up for optimal functioning much better than if you only did one or two things, or none of these things, obviously. Okay. So every day, make it a habit. And it does take time to build new habits. So start small. Don't try to do everything all at once, right? If you're not someone that moves their body or encourages your kiddo to move their body much, maybe start there, right? That's a big one. Nutrition. Rather than throwing everything out cold turkey and starting, this new diet, maybe start to replace one thing out of the week. Okay. Sleep. Start that go to bed alarm. All right. On my phone, I have a sleep mode. So everything, all the colors shut down. It's less stimulating. I have a do not disturb. So I'm just not distracted as much. All right. And I have plenty of friends that have a go to sleep alarm too, because they wake up really early for work. So they can't afford to just hang out and have sleep revenge. Okay. So again, pick one thing that you want to work on for yourself and for your kiddo. Alrighty. Ultimately, what I want you to also take away are these three things. I've been saying this a lot to all my presentations. Know that what you do matters, what you eat matters, and what you think matters. All right. What you do with your body, with your brain, all right, is key. What you eat and put in that body and fuel your body, you want optimal fuel for optimal functioning. And what you think really matters. If you are constantly wiring your brain to worry or to have negative thoughts, then that's the way it's going to automatically route, right? That's what you've trained your brain to do. So training it to be more mindful and have a growth mindset is really key. All right. So we're going to wrap it up here. If you need more help, what do, right? Maybe you've tried a lot of these things. Maybe you have a lot of support from school or other interventions, or not. I'm not sure. But if you need more help, some things to look for in terms of health and cognitive fitness programs. This is key because you need to think about the whole person, right? You want to think about a comprehensive approach that supports your whole well-being and not just one little piece of the puzzle, right? The brain is not that simple. It's not to say that you're looking for someone to solve all your problems. That's not realistic either. There needs to be this coordinated approach. But someone like Harvard Medical School identified 6 key points that you should look for in any program that you want to improve your cognition. That includes exercise, diet, sleep, stress management, social interaction, and mental stimulation. Does that sound familiar? This is something I found well after I started doing these presentations. And I think it's great because brain balance is one of those really incredible forces right now in the entire world that's pushing and successful at changing people's lives. It is successful because it's personalized to each person, incorporates those different factors, and it's a team effort, right? That's the big deal. And by incorporating the physical and sensory motor pieces with the nutrition and cognitive exercises in just a few months, we're able to see kids who went from being nonverbal and needed reminders basically to get through just their morning routine to making jokes and engaging, having eye contact, building up their communication skills, getting A's for the first time in school, right? Without reminders or without help, all right? To adults who thought they never would be able to function, quote unquote, normally because they're always anxious from trauma or from their own neural developmental challenges, to being able to thrive now, right? And build relationships with their family or even have relationships in general. I have a lot of adults who are trying to excel in their career, but they're not able to build quality relationships with their coworkers or in romantic relationships. So knowing the science of the brain, incorporating the neurotech, being a team with us and with your community, with your school or IEP or other providers, that's key in order to make change. And this is just an example of what it could look like in a center like ours, in case you haven't been to us before. We work on many different areas of functioning, just like that pyramid I showed you, from those primitive reflexes to core exercises, balance activities, visual processing and auditory processing pieces, coordination pieces, all while stimulating your senses, right? It's all simultaneous, helping the whole person and all the different centers of the brain get excited, right? The more you can excite and trigger the various connections, the better, and the more successful you are at building malleable and adaptable brain connections, right? Again, for problem solving and executive functioning and just overall abilities. And you can change it yourself, right? You can, again, exercise, you can eat well, and you can support your mental health with these different factors that we talked about tonight. All righty. So last thing, if you know anybody that would benefit from a presentation like this, or if you're interested in any of our free webinars, we do have them monthly. If you go to our website, bit.ly/BBSD events, you can see what our upcoming webinars or just events in general may be. Some are online, some are in person. So check that out. Our next one is actually in a few days, called Failure to Launch. So if you know any teenagers that, or know any other families with teenagers they're concerned about, that would be a good one. We just had one on healthy screen time, and many of our webinars are also saved on our YouTube. And I know Hope on the High Road will also record this and place it on their YouTube channel as a resource. So check it out. There's so many free resources out there for you. If you have additional questions, please contact me. We have 3 centers in Carmel Mountain Ranch, in Chula Vista, and Encinitas as well. And so message me, let me know if you have specific questions, if you're interested in assessment or learning more or want to be referred to some other, professional provider in the community. We have a lot of partnerships because again, we can't do it all ourselves either. We can be a stronger team, but take that responsibility and, take that next step for yourself and for your family. Alrighty. So that's the end of my talk. I'm sure there's questions that we have, and I would love to also have you type in the chat box any aha moments. What did you really take away so that I know how to improve my presentation, and also for the amazing group here, Hope on the High Road, so they know how to support you and what other guest presenters they can bring in. So any additional questions, of course, that's all part of that process.